Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport. It has been very light on the motorsport front for a couple of weekends, but that all changed this past weekend when we had plenty of racing in action all over the world, including IndyCar and Indy NXT from Gateway, NASCAR from Michigan, DTM from the Nürburgring, Supercars from Simmons Plains, Brazilian stock car from the brand new Belo Horizonte street circuit, TCR UK from Silverstone, and World Rallycross in Belgium. So with all that to get through, check out my predictions video first and see what I got right and what I got wrong. Almost everything was wrong again, by the way. And let's jump into the video.
Whilst Alex Palou is a great driver and he will score well, be consistent and is still the favourite to win the championship, he won't win at Gateway. That gives his biggest rivals a chance, and Will Power and Scott Dixon have won plenty of oval races in their long careers. But the win at Gateway will go to Josef Newgarden. It's a boring choice because he is incredible on the ovals and has taken 4 wins at Gateway. In fact, the only drivers in the field to win at Gateway are Newgarden, Power and Dixon.
IndyCar, and we are definitely in the home straight now. Only a few rounds left after this race at Gateway. We had a couple of early yellows. Catherine Legg and Ed Carpenter made contact, as did both Junko's Hollinger cars and Kyle Kirkwood. So we had a slew of early pitters and some who stayed out. A mix of strategies nice and early. Pato O'Ward retired with an engine issue. I bet the Mexican can't wait for 2024 to be over. Kevin Simpson then crashed out, not even at the halfway point. He has shown some talent this year, but he's another that's just watched it drop off towards the end of 2024. At the halfway point, Will Power led and all 3 Penske's were in the top 4. Things got fruity between the Penske cars as they led the way. Josef Newgarden spun trying to pass Colton Herta and brought out a yellow. They were so far ahead, he didn't even lose too many places, but the different strategies in play made it very difficult to work out who had the advantage at this point. The best kind of oval race. It was all boiling over nicely, and when David Malukas made contact with Will Power, it set up a sprint to the end for the win between the Penske's. Sadly, we never saw that sprint. Josef Newgarden led on the restart, but Alexander Rossi went into the back of Will Power, and the pile-up was pretty much the end of the race. A lot of retirements from this one. In fact, it was absolute carnage at Gateway. Newgarden took his 5th Gateway win ahead of Scott McLaughlin. Alex Palou was 4th, and ahead of all of his main title rivals. Great race for Linus Lundqvist to come through for a podium, and it was a fantastic race for Colton Herta, who avoided all the crashes to come up from 25th to 5th, and finds himself 2nd in the championship to Alex Palou. Only a few races left. Next up is the final road course of the year at Portland, and if Alex Palou can do well there, then the title is almost certainly his for a 3rd time. The only string left lacking from his bow is an oval win.
Indy NXT will be where the action is at. Only a few rounds left and Lewis Foster has pulled a decent lead in the championship, won on an oval last time out, and even better, his title rivals Jacob Abel and Caio Collet had a really bad race. So Louis Foster only needs to be conservative and finish the race as high up as possible. And that's what will cost him. He'll get taken out by someone like Miles Rowe, whose first season has completely collapsed. They'll tangle in a fight for 5th and exit the race. Jacob Abel will win and get his title challenge back on track, with Caio Collet in 3rd.
Indy NXT was also coming to us from Gateway, an all-British front row with Louis Foster on pole ahead of Andretti teammate Jamie Chadwick. Both are clearly ready for IndyCar now. We'll start to see them transition at some point, I'm sure, maybe even towards the end of this year. Miles Rowe spun on his own at the start as his rookie season continues to implode every time they race. We lost a few cars very early on, with Caio Collet and Jamie Chadwick having a big crash on the straight. It looked like Collet started to squeeze Chadwick and they made contact, then made more contact with the wall. Either way, Collet's 2nd oval disaster in a row, and a massive shame for Jamie Chadwick, who was on for another good result. Callum Hedge almost sent it sideways into the wall, but he pulled off a save worthy of Gordon Banks to keep it out. George Pearson was not so lucky, and he had a big impact that took him out of the race. A lot of stoppages in this race. We got a fantastic battle on the last lap between Callum Hedge, Bryce Aaron and Christian Brooks, but no one was able to get near race winner Louis Foster, who is almost certainly going to be champion. Jacob Abel was 2nd and maybe has a slim hope, and Juven Sundermarvi on the podium for the first time.
Only 12 cars will make it to the end of the race on the lead lap. I'm predicting absolute carnage for this Indy NXT race.
At least I got something right. 3 rounds left.
Our final stop off in America is with NASCAR in Michigan, and after things got a little heated last time out, in events you would only ever see in NASCAR, which is both a positive and a negative, I guess, let's say NASCAR will fix things and let Austin Dillon win one fairly this time, just to get him in the playoffs.
Alright, let's talk about NASCAR quick. After the controversy of Austin Dillon barging people out of the way to win the last race, we needed a nice quiet NASCAR race to calm everyone down. Not only was I dealing with oval fatigue, I had to come back to this race due to the weather delay, so I warn you now, I was not in the mood for NASCAR this week. It was going to have to try hard to impress. Not much happened on the Sunday, and it wasn't until the end of stage 2 that we got our first big wreck, Kyle Larson taking half the field off with him. Stage 3 was pretty dull too. Truex had a minor issue that caused overtime. Then Ross Chastain had a spin which brought us to second overtime. Tyler Reddick won. This was dull, just a couple of weeks before the playoffs start.
So, who's going to win at the Nürburgring? I think Ricardo Feller is due a win. He's a good driver having a mediocre year, and maybe he can push himself up to the top 4 with a couple of good results. Same goes for reigning champion Thomas Preining. He will win race 2.
DTM was coming to us from a very wet Nürburgring. Everyone was surprisingly well behaved apart from a couple of spinners. The first race wasn't even very interesting. Ayunku Govan spun Nicky Tim at one point and retired, but otherwise a very straightforward race. Kelvin van der Linde won and took the lead of the championship from Mirko Bortolotti, but only by a point. Race 2 was less wet, and by that I mean it was dry. Nicky Tim retired early and brought out the safety car. Mara Engel led early on. We had some fantastic racing in this one. The first 6 places were super close. Arjun Maini also had a mechanical and brought out another safety car to mess with strategies and the like. Mara Engel then got turned around by Rene Rast on cold tyres. Rast had already driven into the back of Mirko Bortolotti and seemingly was the one-man wrecking crew of the weekend. The second half of the race quietened down into a similar slog as race 1, which was a shame because the battles in the first half were epic. The other van der Linde won race 2, so a good weekend of the Linde household. Kelvin leads the championship with 3 rounds left.
Will Brown is still leading the championship and has only finished off the podium twice all year. So I think he will take a win and re-establish his dominance, and someone like Tom Randall will win in race 2. Whilst Will Brown will still have a strong championship lead, it's all going to fall apart for Brock Feeney, and he might find himself in a situation where he has to give way for his teammates. I think he'll have some kind of mishap in one of the races that really damages his title hopes.
Supercars from Tasmania, an interesting track with a lovely hairpin. That is usually a good pinch point for the unlucky amongst the field. Shame this race didn't have any action at all. Chaz Mostert climbing through the field late on to try and take a win was the only excitement. He couldn't get past Nick Percat, who took the win for Matt Stone, but with Will Brown down in 8th, this was a championship challenging second place for Mostert. I do feel like this should have been a slam dunk win for Brock Feeney, who must have been disappointed with 3rd, maybe a sign he's not yet ready to be a title contender. On to race 2, David Reynolds got turned around by reigning champion Brody Kostecki, and that launched us into a busy pit lane as everyone changed tyres under the safety car. This race was a lot more stop-start. Jackson Evans and Aaron Love made contact and brought out a second safety car. Hey, remember when I said Brock Feeney would have a disaster? Well, he fell victim to an angry Tom Randall, who had been bumped out of second place by Will Brown. They collided at the hairpin, and Feeney was turned around. His championship had just taken a big hit, like his car. Cam Waters took an easy win, keeps him interested in the championship, but Will Brown was second and Mostert 4th, so it was a net win for Mostert over the course of the weekend. Bryce Forward got on the podium for the first time since 2020, but the story of the weekend was Brock Feeney getting dropped by Randall. He's lost ground with the endurance races up next. This was a pretty dull weekend, but race 2 definitely had its moments.
I guess there is an advantage to the more experienced drivers in the field, but that doesn't narrow it down. There is a lot of very experienced drivers in this field. Let's go for a race 1 win for Rubens Barrichello, and a race 2 for Rafael Suzuki, who was leading the championship at one point and therefore is good enough to be a race winner at the Belo Horizonte street circuit.
Brazilian Stock Car Pro was at the brand new Belo Horizonte street circuit, and we had a very mixed up grid for both races. Gabriel Casagrande was at the back and others had struggled in qualifying. The track had everything you want from a street circuit. Narrow bits, chicanes, hairpins and some room to overtake. There were a few incidents and near misses, but no real chaos in race 1. Some good fighting on track and the pit stops mixed things up nicely. The first Belo Horizonte win went to Thiago Camilo ahead of Enzo Elias and the Barrichello family. Second race was a terrible one for Daniel Serra. We had an early safety car, but Felipe Baptista got past Serra just before, and then Daniel Serra was stuck in the pits for over a minute. Meanwhile, Enzo Elias hit the wall and brought out the second safety car. The safety car period went too long, and the race was red flagged, maybe learning difficulties on recovering cars on a street circuit. Gaetano De Moro went off at the restart, so another safety car. This second race was a bit of a mess with very little racing. Felipe Baptista won the race, but this was a good debut for the Belo Horizonte street circuit, but the Stock Car Championship is pretty hard to pick a winner for right now. I don't know who will be champion, and we still have a few rounds left before we find out. The Vela Park is next in a few weeks' time. Felipe Massa leads the championship, but only 13 points separate the top 5.
After Adam Shepherd's massive disappointment at Croft, he has to come out swinging, so I'm going to put him down for 2 wins to keep the title race open and interesting for us fans. I don't know about the other win. Let's go for young debutant Owen Hillman in a Lincoln Co, just turning up and causing a massive shock.
TCR UK from Silverstone, and could anybody stop Carl Boardley from running away with the championship? Feels a bit like calling a diabetic horse a stallion, but that's TCR for you. Carl Boardley and Adam Shepherd made contact right at the start, with Shepherd getting turned around. He rejoined and took out Will Powell, so it was less than a spectacular start for the title protagonists. Late in the race, Jeffrey Alden retired and brought out the safety car, which gave Adam Shepherd a chance to close back up to the front. But not much changed, so a win for Boardley ahead of Callum Newsham, with Shepherd only making it up to 7th. Race 2 was the first on Sunday. Adam Shepherd went wrong before the start and was pushed off the grid. His championship has really gone to the dogs over the last couple of rounds. But then even Carl Boardley hit trouble in this one. The Honda of Brad Thurston was punted off into the gravel, but he wasn't as off as his teammate was. Will Powell upside down, car was destroyed, but he was a-okay. Of course, we got a red flag to clean the mess up. Brad Hutchison won the race ahead of Newsham and Boardley. Unfortunately, Newsham and Hutchison collided at the start of race 3. Newsham was out just as he took the championship lead. Adam Shepherd led, but then his front splitter fell off, and that was 3 disappointing races that have ruined his championship. Actually, the last 6 have really sucked for Shepherd. Carl Boardley took the win and took back the championship lead. Although Adam Shepherd might lead on the ridiculous drop score rules, which I have always hated. It makes no sense.
Finally, we head to the dirt and World Rallycross from Belgium. Still impossible to bet against Johan Christophersen. He'll take both wins, but Clara Anderson will take another podium, and the Hansen brothers will have another tough weekend.
Finally, we have World Rallycross from Belgium, and a small field of cars again taking part and trying to keep up with Johan Christophersen. Well, the Hansen brothers won the semi-finals, the second of which might be the worst Rallycross race I've ever seen. 4 cars and 3 of them were broken. Timmy Hansen could have got out and walked around the track. He slowed it down completely and still won by nearly 30 seconds. Final was alright. Christophersen couldn't get past the Hansen brothers and ended up with a puncture. Timmy Hansen won the race ahead of OC Vaby. On to day 2, Christophersen and a repaired Nicholas Gronholm took both the heat victories and the semi-finals. So the 6 cars in the finals were being driven by the Scandinavians. 2 petrol versus 4 electric. A lot of bashing and bumping at the starts, but no one could stop Johan Christophersen from winning, taking a clean sweep for the day and a massive lead in the championship. I would call the World Rallycross skippable, if I'm honest. So that was all the action from the past weekend. What was your race of the weekend? Mine has to be the IndyCar race at Gateway. Plenty of action and some nice drama, with championship implications, of course. Indy NXT, Brazilian Stock Car and TCR UK were a lot of fun, whilst everything else was pretty much okay. Next weekend, Formula 1 is back on our screens with the Dutch Grand Prix from Zandvoort. We also have the return of the F1 Academy, IndyCar and Indy NXT from Portland, NASCAR from Daytona, IMSA from Virginia, Super Formula and Formula Regional Japan from Motegi, European Le Mans from Spa, British touring cars on the Donington Park Grand Prix circuits, and the start of Euro 4 Series from Mugello. That is a lot of motorsport and some very long races in there as well. It is going to be a very busy weekend, so leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching and have a good one.